I'm already mid-season form with the mistakes. We ain't even kicked off the season. So, all right. So be thinking of questions for these guys. And this is going to be a little bit different as far as prep. Now, I know Anthony does a lot of play-by-play. Bart's main job is play-by-play at Mississippi State with TV. And if y'all are interested, we can ask differences with TV and radio for these two first, or Jason Baker too, because Jason is ESPN. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first before we get to kind of prep and stuff with like sideline and color. So Bart, we'll start with you, then go to Jason, and then we'll go to Anthony. What is the biggest difference from radio to TV? Because you guys go back and forth during the season doing different things, whether it be pregame or whatever, or calling play-by-play. So Anthony, we'll start with you. What is the biggest difference from radio to TV?
Well, the obvious biggest difference, and yeah, I started out doing almost exclusively radio, and now it's flipped where probably 95% of what I do is TV. The obvious difference is on the TV side, everyone can see what's happening. So you're not having to describe every little thing. The person watching can tell what's going on. So the main difference is having to learn that on the TV side, it is creating a rapport with your broadcast partner so that you're having a continuous conversation about what's happening and throwing in additional information to maybe flesh out what the person watching has already seen. The first time I was doing TV, I started out and I was doing it like radio play-by-play. That's just what I naturally did, and very quick, the director in my ear told me, "Stop doing radio. It's in radio. Stop doing radio." So I took the earpiece out, but then afterwards I spoke to him, and I had to learn pretty quick that on the TV side, it's essentially have a conversation, and really for me, it's letting my analyst be the star of the show, and I'm just serving as the MC or the host, and letting them really fill in the blanks and add in all the colorful analysis and stories. Except
for when I do color with you,
especially
right?
When you do color.
He talks a whole lot more when I'm on with him. All right, so you done? Jason, we'll pass the mic down.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a much more storytelling event to me in TV, and I feel that it's a little bit different prep than maybe what it is on the radio side. I'm very statistical, numbers, hometown, maybe where they went to previous, from the college level, previous school with the transfer portal now, and making that connection. And then on the television side, there's a graphic that tells you that. So for me, my focal point is never just maybe that prior school, because they're going to pop that up there, if he's the quarterback from Florida State or what have you. It's more about, can I tell you the story about that quarterback from Florida State and what makes him significant in that game? And so that's the difference in my prep from say a women's basketball broadcast that's going to be exclusively on the radio for me versus a Southern Miss football broadcast, or the baseball. Really, I can go almost multiple pitches or plays rather in a baseball game, and if I've passed that story on to my color analyst and he's talking, he knows I instruct my guys to don't ever stop the story. Keep going. If it's not just a catastrophic event or something amazing, I want you to finish your thought process first. We'll recap the action on television. You don't get that luxury on television, or on radio, because when the play's over, it's gone and it's on to the next one. So those are the significant differences that really I had to learn coming from a pure 100% radio background into TV when this ESPN Plus stuff grew.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jason. I think one of the biggest things about broadcasting TV is most of us started out in radio, which I think was really good because it allowed us to first of all, to prepare and understand the numbers and things of that nature. But you also have to learn to understand that the people are watching what you're seeing, and sometimes that you have to guard against talking too much. I talked to Dave Neal, and of course, most of us know who Dave Neal is and doing a lot of stuff with ESPN. And Dave gave me some great advice several years ago when he was doing TV, and he was like, when I'm broadcasting a baseball game, there's about 3 times during the game that I just set my watch for a minute and shut up. And so many times in a broadcast, because you're so in tune to broadcasting and talking and hearing yourself talk, there's sometimes you just got to let the action control everything. And that's what I've tried to do is allow the action to kind of speak. Now, if something happens, I'm not going to be quiet on a home run or things like that, or a big base hit. But, sir, there are times when you're doing TV, and a lot of people are doing streams now where, you may be doing high school football, but everything is being streamed. It may not be on an over-the-air radio station anymore. It may just be a Facebook Live. That doesn't mean that you have to give every single pass because people are watching. And sometimes just being quiet and shutting up and letting the action kind of speak for itself. Another thing about radio and TV is when you're broadcasting radio, you control the content. When you're broadcasting at the Division I level, a lot of times the relationship you have with not only your color analysts, but your producer as well. And there are so many times that you look at Twitter and you see where people are giving broadcasters a hard time in a TV broadcast, when a lot of times the content's being driven by someone sitting in the truck. And I've had 4 kids, and at one time I had 4 kids under the age of 10. And I equate TV broadcasting sometimes to giving directions over the phone, and the 4 kids are yelling and screaming in the background because you've got someone in your earpiece trying to tell you, okay, I'm going to this wide shot here, talk about the guy eating the hot dog there. And so that's something that you don't control when you're sitting there doing a TV broadcast. A lot of times those decisions, the camera angles, and what you're talking about is not in your control. Now, if you have a good relationship with your producer, you can talk about those storylines beforehand. But to me, that's the biggest differences in radio and TV.
All right, so this next question is going to be for Harry and Jay and, of course, Gary. Harry, I want to start with you as a color analyst. As far as prep, what is the first thing that you're thinking, hey, I've got to have down pat before I go into that booth on Saturday?
It is a lot. As David said, 30 hours a week. I mean, I have a full-time job anyway. This is a Saturday afternoon gig or Saturday night gig for me. But, fortunately in this day and age of communications, then our videographer there at Ole Miss will send. We've got an app. He can actually send out the people, the teams that we're going to play that coming week. He'll send me the app on an iPad, and I can watch the actually game film. And they give you back, sideline shot and a rear view shot. So preparation is the big thing. I like to, before the season gets started, I like to be able to. I go to enough practices to know all our guys' names and numbers, and sometimes that gets a little crazy when we're playing fast break football, which is what we do. And sometimes you just sit back and go, David, keep talking, because there's not enough time to get anything colorful in, right? But really having a communication and a good chemistry with your play-by-play guy. I'm going to tell a funny story. I think it's appropriate here. And this is how well I know David Callum. This will be my 23rd season to be with David. So this is back 2013, end of the season. We're playing ULM, and it's kind of a boring game. We're up pretty big. And I'm in the health insurance business, and I got a customer down in Macomb, Mississippi, and he and his fiance had just gotten engaged. And I told Kellum earlier, I said, now, I'm going to throw this out when the game gets boring in the second half. So here we get to this point. I go, I want to give a shout-out to Barry and Clifton on their recent engagement, and Clifton being my customer. And all of a sudden, I get this pregnant pause out of Kellum. And we go on break, and I look down, I go, it's David, Barry's a girl. Well, he wanted to know if we were congratulating 2 dudes. I said, no. So that's how well I know David Kellum, and it's good to be on that level with anybody you're working with, of course. And but it is a lot of preparation to get ready for it. And once again, as Rob J said, if you know the quarterback and his name and number, you can't go too far off there. But a lot, SEC, they expect more than just the quarterback, and so it is a lot of preparation to get ready for each and every week. Having watched it on TV, that's another way to get prepared. Especially in the SEC, you don't get the non-conference games that much, but SEC, you get to tape those games each and every week. And I was looking at the broadcast for August 31st. A lot of teams that we play that first day, and so there'll be a lot of broadcasting and a lot of tape that day.
And so you're looking at it from a color analyst perspective. Jay, you're on the sidelines, and it's a whole different animal. I've done it before, and got a couple of gigs scheduled for this year. So I love it. It's a different prep. So explain to everybody what you're focused on when you're going into game week.
Yeah, I think the thing about doing sideline work is you have to be able to bring something to the broadcast that they can't get from anybody but the home side, because otherwise you're pretty obsolete, right? I mean, because of the way the game's going, you don't have time for multiple analysts, right? You've got time for your main play-by-play. In our case, Neil, of course, Matt does our color. They don't need me on there adding a third analyst voice on the play. So you really have to be able to bring something, or give your best ability to bring something unique that only home radio can possibly bring you. Now, for me, this will be my 8th season at Mississippi State. For the first 8 seasons, or the first 7 seasons, it was really simple, because I was director of player development for football for 6. Or for 5, I was an associate athletic director for 2. I'm now leaving the university from a everyday employment situation. I'll still be doing sideline radio, obviously. So the first 6 years were really, 7 years were really easy. I just walked out of my office, and I was in every staff meeting. So for me, it was almost, I had to dial back, because I knew information that I couldn't let be on the radio. When even Neil or Matt might not know if somebody was dressing, or might not know. So I was sometimes in a weird situation. Let me tell you real quickly what you don't want to do is be an employee of Dan Mullen's and then have to interview him at halftime when you're getting your butt kicked. That's not fun, because then you were no longer the radio guy, you were my employee. So I think the big thing is the preparation now. So for me, it'll look a little different this year. I went to practice before because it was part of my job. Now I'll go to practice because I need the information. The other thing I would, kind of my advice would be, and this is I did Starkville High School color and play-by-play for over 10 years. And you're right. The information's not there, whether you're doing sidelines, and even a few high schools now have that. But whether you're doing play-by-play, you're doing color, where it's Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Holmes, Itawamba, Starkville High School, reach out to your counterparts at those schools, because you'll be amazed. I mean, there are a ton of guys in this room. You'll be amazed at how much those people want to help you. And so especially if you're doing a high school game, reach out. I can't tell you the number of times Judge Carlson and I were my South Panola people. We were friends. I'd clerked at the Supreme Court. I'm a lawyer by trade, and so I would call him and say, hey, what do I need to know? And I would share the same. So I do think preparation is important. To DK's point, you're going to have so much information, and you're going to really want to use it. And so I'm on the sidelines, and man, I got it, and I'm telling Neil and Matt, hey, I got something. Well, by the time they get to me, that it's passed. And so you've got to be comfortable at just saying, okay, it's passed. And that's just not one I'm going to use this week. And that's okay. It just be comfortable in being okay that you're not going to use it all.
All right, so Gary Darby, I will focus now what you do with the Grizzlies. And let me tell you, one day I didn't even know it was Gary. I was listening to the Grizzlies Network, and I was like, that's not Gary. That sounds too good to be Gary. I know he sounds good, but he sounds even better. Like, well, this is not Gary Darby. And he's like, I'm Gary Darby. And I was like, Gary Darby? What? That's Gary? You're doing pregame, you do halftime, you do postgame. So what is your focus of when you go into a game, and what's your job responsibilities and advice for someone who does that in the audience for either high school, JUCO, or college?
I have to be careful, because now that I'm back again with the Ole Miss Football Network, I could have a Grizzly game on Friday, an Ole Miss game on Saturday, and a Grizzly game on Sunday afternoon.
And your pregame.
And I've got to I got to be sure, because I have done it on a Grizzlies game. We'll be back after this on the Ole Miss Radio Network.
Yep.
Okay. And so I always have a computer, or I have a piece of paper that tells me which team I'm with at this point, because it can get a little wacky. And so my preparation, I mean, it's almost an everyday thing for me, and it will get a few hours at a time. They call me the studio host for the Grizzlies, and I'm just doing road games now. At one point, I was doing every game. I got in 2011. I was telling the story to somebody. I was getting out of radio altogether. I'd had enough, right? It's over. I'm buying a medical courier service in Memphis, and the Grizzlies job came open. And my wife said, well, just apply for it. And I'm like, well, we're about to do this. She goes, well, what are they going to? If they tell you no, we're buying the business. If they tell you yes, you can live your dream of being involved in professional sports. And they said yes. It was a lockout year. Basketball play-by-play guys, imagine, and I'm just doing the studio host, but filling in and doing talk shows during the day too in Memphis, getting 61 games in 3.5 months. We were playing sometimes 4 out of 5 days. So I'm just doing, the pregame stuff, which is easy. DK and Jim and John, you guys would be doing 4 games in 5 nights and traveling all over the place while doing it. So my preparation, I get a 30-minute pregame show. I can do whatever I want for the postgame links, and when they're in Los Angeles and it's 1:30 in the morning, that postgame show is about 10 minutes long. We're not going too deep in it. The home post will take phone calls, actually, which that's a whole another thing to be prepared for. But that's the thing. And with the NBA, I have to be cognizant, and it's getting into this college world of analytics, right? My group wants to know pace of play, offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. They want to know when LeBron James and Anthony Davis are on the floor, they're a plus whatever. Well, thank goodness you sports media relations people are there for guys like me, that I can have that. And then I'll have way too much. And if you ever get in a studio host gig and you hear the play-by-play guy in your ear from whatever arena, well, I can't use that note. I did something right. You when you start stealing Kellum's notes in the football, you've done something right, and be prepared. And I'll tell one story here, and then we can move. This is early in my career. David, Jim, and John, you guys remember the Winn-Dixie baseball tournaments in New Orleans? Okay. Kellum couldn't do the Ole Miss game, so I'm going down to do all of those. John, you couldn't do a Southern Miss game, and I did a Southern Miss that morning and Ole Miss that night. My preparation for Southern Miss was names and numbers. That's all I had. I tried to do what my mentor had taught me to do and be as prepared as possible for Ole Miss. I get back from that weekend, and I have family that live in Laurel and different places that are Southern Miss fans. I have Mississippi State fans in Columbus, and then, of course, my whole Ole Miss family. I get from the Southern Miss fans, "Oh, you were awesome. You did a great job filling in. We really appreciate it. You sounded so good. You knew everything about the team." All I knew was the roster that was in front of me, and I called the baseball game. I knew everything about Ole Miss, and the Ole Miss people were, "You sounded too much like Jim Ellis." And I got that a lot, and then eventually I looked at someone and I said, "Thanks. Thank you." Because I grew up in North Mississippi listening to the Ole Miss and the State guys, and listening to Jack when he was there, listening to baseball with Jim, Stan Torgens before you, and then David, and taking something from all of it. And I think I finally shut some of the Ole Miss folks up from the "you sound too much like Jim Ellis doing baseball" when I told them that's a compliment. That is a compliment. We are really lucky that in this state we do have the gentlemen that are here that have been here for a long time, and truthfully, all of our schools. So many times when I talk to the people in the professional cities, they're amazed at when they actually do come through, or they actually do listen at what we have here in all levels. And I think Graham can tell you, because Graham, you filled in and done stuff at Texas Tech, right? You've done stuff all over the place because they can't find talent in that area. They may have to fly somebody from Los Angeles to Lubbock to do it. I've heard that from the people. Like, we're very lucky to have people like this in this room, and I wanted to say that.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Anybody have a question for them before we get to breakout session?
I just want to go back to the first question, because a lot of high schools are running into this. At JUCO, at Jones College, so we would have the same broadcast on multiple platforms. So we would have the video and our audio on jcjc.tv, plus Super Talk Laurel would carry our audio. So if you have a video, a TV and a radio audience, I mean, is it just good luck, or do you side to one or the other?
Radio. Yeah. Cater to your radio audience. Yeah. The folks who are watching will appreciate too much information versus the folks who are listening only, not having enough information.
Yeah. they'd be lost.
Yeah, no, I agree. One thing that too I was going to point out when Bart and I did a lot of SEC Network Plus stuff before I was working at the university, but one of the things that's really hard, it was hard for me, and I think all these guys that do both do a great job, and that's the silence. But everybody remembers the Kirk Gibson home run, right? Not everybody's. Too many people here that are way too young. A lot of us remember the Kirk Gibson home run. Go back and Google it. Go watch the YouTube clip. Vin Scully I can't remember now, it was like a minute 39. I mean, it was like some eternity. He calls the home run, and then he got out of the way. And it is an uncomfortable amount of silence. Any of us in this room that broadcast, if we were to be talking to somebody and we just sat there, we would lose our mind. But in that moment, it was so incredible, and it let it breathe. And I think all these guys do a great job. The other thing I would say real quick, last thing, I know we're probably about to wrap up as advice, some of the greatest compliments that people like David Kellum, John, and Jim get, and I love this compliment, is when a fan of the other team says, he's just a homer. Right? And they all do it. Every State fan says DK's a homer. Every Ole Miss fan says Jim's a homer, et cetera, et cetera. That's the best compliment ever, because guess what? That's what you're supposed to be. And don't ever let anybody tell you that you're not supposed to be that. Now, if you're doing SEC Network Plus or ESPN Plus, different story. But for those guys, for us, we're supposed to be. The last thing I'll say is this, too. Find your own voice. We're so lucky that we've got David Kellum and Jim and John and of course, the late Jack Crystal. Find your own voice. Because no offense to any of us, but ain't none of us them. So the young people in the room that are just getting into it, find your voice. Don't be like Jim or Jack or John or DK. Find your own voice. So I just wanted to pass that out.
All right, we're going to do our breakout sessions. That way you guys can ask questions and go to different tables. Did you want to say something, Charles? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have just a comment and a question. Is something I'm learning doing the TV side after doing radio for so long. How do you especially for like softball, I do our SWAC softball tournament for our SWAC digital network, so I'm not just doing Alcorn, I'm doing other teams. In the moments, bottom of the ninth inning, someone hits a home run, a walk-off, and you let the game breathe. How easy or how difficult is that in the moment? Like on radio, you're saying a whole bunch of stuff, but on TV, you want to let the game breathe because people don't want to hear you. They want to see the moment. They want to see the walk-off. They want to see. How do you temper that? How do you do that? Because for me, that's the one thing I'm learning in this TV space.
Well, and that's a great question, and you have to also think about when you're doing that, who is going to pick up the highlights. And for us, if we're doing an SEC Network broadcast on a weekend where we're playing Auburn, or if we're playing Ole Miss, and an Ole Miss player comes up with that big hit, and this is not just about the highlights, the big plays. This is about the entire game. We had to be cognizant of that the entire game, because I know that night the SEC Network is going to pick up highlights of that game, and the last thing that I want to do is take away from a kid from Ole Miss just because I was the Mississippi State guy on the TV broadcast. That kid is owed that moment no matter what happens. And for us, and kind of going back to what you're saying, Charles, and going back to what Jay alluded to a minute ago, when I think about G-Darb down there and DK and John Cox, and I see this a lot with a lot of community college people in this room right here, is you have to value the relationships that you have at the other schools. And you have to ask them questions, and you gain a rapport with them, but never sell out your information. There's no way in the world that I would get back channel information 15 minutes before broadcast from Gary Darby and get on the air and say, well, I was talking to Gary Darby and this is what he said. I mean, so you have to be, but use your counterparts, because I'm telling you this right now, we get lost in rivalry so many times, and I know at East Mississippi and East Central, and you talk about Jones and Pearl River, but at the end of the day, let me tell you something. I care about David Kellum, and I care about John Cox and Gary Darby, and these guys are my friends. And that's one of the things you have to get past in today's world of rivalries about how we're all trying to do the same thing. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. Real quick, Gary, Jason brought up a situation with Gary, and this is why I think the world of Gary Darby. He was doing Ole Miss women's basketball for a long time, and I was doing Mississippi State women's basketball during that time. And we were in Little Rock for the tournament, and they had this phone system that would not link up with our tie line equipment. And so it kept on kicking us off. And so Gary had the problems in the early morning broadcast. I had the problems of the late night broadcast, couldn't get on the air. And I finally talked to the arena person, and I was like, do you have a dedicated phone line that is not attached to the system? They said, yes. Can you run that line to right here? Yes. And we were on the air. We had no problems. I said, okay, Ole Miss is going to play the first game tomorrow morning. Will you put that line right here, because he has the same kind of equipment? I called Gary. I said, hey, I think you're going to be good. Next day, Gary shows up. He gets about halfway through the broadcast, and all of a sudden I look down there, and he's on a cell phone. And he is red-faced and mad. I'm talking about his face is as red as that Ole Miss shirt he's wearing. And he is mad. And so he does the rest of the game on a cell phone. After the game's over with, he's like, man, it didn't work. So anyway, he calls me on the way home, and he says, or calls me, he leaves, and he says, man, I found that arena manager, and I let him have it. And this is ridiculous. This is the SEC tournament, yada, yada, yada. Well, anyway, 2 minutes later, after I get off the phone with Gary, this kind, nice lady walks up behind me. She says, I felt so bad. I kicked that guy's line out over here, his phone line out. Anyway, but use your relationships every day, and that's what we do.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it. And we're going to have our breakout sessions in a moment. Hey, David.